بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعلموا أنما غنمتم من شيء فأن لله خمسه وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Dear brothers and sisters, this is the third session. I'm speaking about Khums. There are different questions directed to the offices of grand religious authorities. People ask questions about different topics and different subjects in connection with religious texts or khums, which is 1/5 of your income or 1/5 of the property which you have earned either through work or received as a gift or maybe obtained from the oceans, from the minerals. And of course there are 7 items. As I mentioned in the previous session, there are 7 items on which Khums is payable. The first is the profit or the gains, the yearly profit, the yearly income. And of course the second is the minerals, and then the spoils of war, and also the property which is mixed with a halal property mixed with haram, and also the gems that you might obtain from the oceans, from the rivers, the gems, and also treasure trove. And maybe the 7th one is the land which a zimmi unbeliever, a zimmi kafir, buys from a Muslim. And of course a zimmi kafir is one who lives under the protection of a Muslim government or a Muslim ruler. He has to give khums from the property, from the land which he buys from a Muslim. These are the 7 items. Of course, in the previous 2 sessions, I did explain the rules of profit and income a person earns by way of trade, by way of industry, or by way of labor, or by way of receiving as a gift from someone, from a relative, or from a friend. There are different ways of receiving things, or maybe earning something, or maybe gaining a profit. If you, for example, economize in your life, and if you are frugal, saving something from the property which you have bought or from the things you have, you save some of it by way of economizing, by way of frugality. And by doing this, a part of that thing, or maybe a quantity of that thing, or an amount of the money which you have in your bank account or in your box remains unused. If this is the case, then you have to give khums from 1/5 of the surplus, from the 1/5 of the excess, from 1/5 of that thing which has come in excess of your annual needs. And there is one important question people ask. They say we are paying tax to the government and we cannot evade tax because the government actually take the tax from or receives the tax from the monthly income we have, and the tax is deducted from our salary. And why should we give khums? Because we are giving tax to the government. This is an important question which is asked by people, especially those people who are actually employed or who are government employees. This is one of the questions asked by them. Now the answer is this: actually the tax levied by the government has nothing to do with the religious tax, with the khums you have to pay. Khums is a duty which you must fulfill even if you do not pay tax, even if you manage to evade tax. Of course, the religious authorities do not encourage tax evasion. If you are living in a country of which you are a national, of which you are a citizen, and you have agreed to be an abiding citizen, of course you have to pay religious tax, you have to pay the tax, and you cannot evade tax. You must give it, and as a Muslim you should abide by the law, by the rules of the country of which you are a citizen. And it does not make any difference whether that country is a Muslim country you are living in or a non-Muslim country. You must be an abiding citizen. Of course, if the government does not ask you to, does not deduct any salary from your tax, from your salary, any tax from your salary, and if the government knows nothing about your job, about your income, about your asset, and about your revenue, it's not necessary for you to inform the government. It's not necessary for you to hand over your tax to the government. And so far as the government does not deduct the tax from your salary, and so far as the government does not compel you to give the tax, it's not necessary and it's not obligatory for you to give your tax to the government. Of course, this rule applies more to a non-Muslim country where you are living rather than a Muslim country. If you are living in a Muslim country, in a Shia country, of course you have to give tax and you have to abide by the commands, by the injunctions and by the orders of the Muslim ruler. Of course, a Muslim ruler, when we say Muslim ruler or an Islamic ruler, we mean an Islamic ruler who is qualified, who is just, and who is eligible as a ruler, not someone who has come to power through illegal means or by force or by coercion. So you have to take notice of the definition of Islamic government. Every government is not an Islamic government, even if it is called Islamic by name, because of the majority of people living in that country or Muslims, so you have to consider that country as a Muslim country. Of course, an Islamic state is a state which is just, which is legal, and whose ruler is eligible and just and qualified for the leadership of the Muslim Ummah. Now, when it comes to Khums, Khums has nothing to do with the tax you are going to pay. Khums is levied on your income and on the profit you earn annually throughout a year. And if you save your money in your account through economizing, through frugality, you have to pay Khums from the surplus, from the amount which exceeds the annual expenses of yourself and your family. Now, if you have, of course, a regular income, the religious authorities have always advised their followers to set a date for payment of Khums. They have to set a year. Now, if you are a government employee or if you have started working somewhere, the first day of your work is the first day of the Khums year. This is an important issue that you should take notice of. The first day of your work is the first day of your Khums year, and when the year ends, you have to start calculating your profit and the income and the money which you have saved in your account and the things you have purchased and your debt also. If you have debt, of course, you have to pay off. If you have loans, if you have taken loans from the bank, from individuals, you have to pay off from the income which you have earned during the year, of course. And of course, if you have received loan in the previous years, you can pay off those loans, or you can clean your debt with the income of the same year, but you are not relieved of the obligation to pay Khums. You have to pay Khums from that, from the income of the same year, if you are going to use it in order to pay off your loans which you took in the previous years. Of course, if you take a loan or if you receive a loan from someone or from an institution or a company in the same year, and you also receive money, and in the same year you can pay off that loan with the income you have received in the same year, and you are not going to give Khums from that income, from that money which you earned this year. This is an important issue normally asked by people who take loans from banks. This is, of course, an important question. They ask questions as to whether Khums is payable on the loan, Khums is payable on the borrowed money or not. Of course, Khums is not. Basically speaking, in principle, generally speaking, Khums is not payable on loan, on mortgage, and on the debts or on borrowed money which you have received from your friends, from a company, from an institution. Now, there is a situation, there is actually a supposition. If you have received a loan from a bank and you have paid off the loan through installments. Now, for example, you received $10,000 from a company or from a bank, and you have paid $5,000 of that amount of money you have repaid through installments, and now that $5,000 is with you, and you have not actually spent it, the religious authorities have said that you must pay khums from that $5,000. As far as the extra amount is concerned, the extra loan, the other $5,000 are concerned, it's not necessary for you to pay khums from that amount or from that loan which is yet to be repaid. And I wanted to clarify that a laborer, a person who has a regular income, should fix a date, should fix a year. The year should have a beginning and an end. For example, if the beginning of Muharram is the first day of your Khums year, then the next day, the next Muharram, and the beginning of the next Muharram is the end of your Khums year, and you must repay, you must pay off your Khums and Khums of whatever you have earned in the year, and which has exceeded the annual expenses of yourself and your family and the dependent family members like your father, your children, your wife, and your mother. These are the people whom you should provide for. These are the people whom you have to pay for, whose necessities, whose medication, food, clothing, and everything that they need in their lives. They are the people whom you should actually pay their expenses. And if your asset, if your income, if your revenue, or if the money you have earned during this year exceeds the annual expenses of yourself and your family, you have to, of course, pay khums from the excess, from the surplus. Now, if you do not have a regular income, because you are not a government employee, you are not employed by an institution or a company, and you are someone who do not have actually a job, but you have you may have an income, but it's not a regular income. Now, if that regular income exceeds your annual expenses, again you have to pay khums at the end of the year. And of course, you can fix different dates for your different incomes. Now, if you have different sources of income, for example, you are a taxi driver, a part-time job. You have a part-time job. For example, you are a taxi driver. You are also, for example, selling things out in the market, and that is also a source of income. And of course, you have different sources of income, so you can actually fix different dates for different incomes. And whenever the dates, the year ends, you have to pay khums from that. And of course, if there's nothing that exceeds the annual expenses of yourself and your family, there's nothing that you should pay. And of course, there are indeed some individuals who have never paid khums throughout their life, even though they have income, they have a stable source of income, they have a handsome salary, and now they want to pay khums. This is an important question asked by them. How are they going to calculate their khums, and how are they going to deal with all the income and all this and the sources and all the things they have bought in the previous years? Of course, the religious authorities have said that one should look back at the history of his income. If he remembers anything, and if he's certain about the things that he has bought or he has used, or maybe he has received during the past years, and he has had an excess of his annual expenses, then he has to act according to his certainty. He has to repay khums from whatever he has earned in the past, provided that those things should have been in excess of his needs and in excess of his expenses. As for the part and the things about which you are not sure, then it's not necessary for you to pay anything. You should think, you should go back. If you have a bank account, you can check the history of your account. For example, if you had an amount left in your bank account in the previous year, you have to pay khums from that amount. You have to pay khums from that amount. Now, there's another question people ask, and that is, how should we pay khums? Now we have nothing in our account, we have nothing to pay, we have no money now, even though we know that, of course, in the previous years we had some amount of money left from our income at the end of the year. Now, how can we pay khums from the previous years? We cannot afford to pay now a huge amount of money we have to pay if we are going to pay. Now, there's also a solution, there's also an alternative for this problem. If you are faced with such a case, with such a problem, then the religious authorities have introduced a solution, and that is, you should talk to the wakil, to the deputy, to the representative of your marja for a compromise. You should negotiate with the wakil, with the authority, with the representative of the mujtahid whom you are following. Talk to him, negotiate with him, and tell him to compromise. He will ask you to give your khums dues, your religious dues, on different installments. And of course, it depends on how much you afford and how much you can pay. For example, if you owe, for example, some $5,000 and you cannot pay it right away, you can pay it on installments within a span of 5 years or less than 5 years, 1 year, 2 years, and you can pay it every month, for example, some $500, $1,000 every month or every 2 months. It depends on how much you afford and how much you can pay. Now, if the wakil, if the representative of your marja agrees to accept installments, then that is the only way you can relieve yourself of the obligation of khums. And of course, also you can talk directly to your marja if you have access to him. He might even exempt you. He might even forego the khums. If you are a needy person, if you are a poor person who deserves to receive help, to be helped, then he might even forgive you. He might exempt you of the amount which you owe in terms of the religious tax and religious dues. Of course, if you can pay, there is no way that you should delay the payment of khums. You must take quick action to relieve yourself of the obligation, and there is no other way that you can evade the religious tax. The religious tax cannot be evaded. You cannot actually escape from paying a religious dues, and there is no justification, there is no excuse that you can cook. You have to give it, and you cannot skip it. These are some of the details, these are some of the explanations in regards with the profit and income which a person earns, or maybe a gift that you might receive from a friend or a relative. And inshallah, in the next session to come, I will carry on explaining the remaining rules of khums. Of course, khums is a lengthy topic, a very detailed subject. We have to speak about minerals, about treasure trove, about halal property mixed with haram, and also we have to speak a little about spoils of war, and also gems obtained from the oceans. And these are, of course, issues or topics that you have very little to do with. You do not, most often, you do not, of course, obtain spoils, gems from the oceans, and in the present time we don't have anything like war that may have been authorized by a religious authority or by an imam, infallible imam. Of course, we are living in a different time and in a different occasion, in a different era, and of course it's good to know the rules, and it's good to understand everything and to be aware of the rules, even though you might not actually have anything to do with them, or you may not be in contact with many issues. Do follow up and continue following the discussions. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا